Today I have a bit of a different take on Doom C than what you may be used to seeing. Taking inspiration from my creation back in 2023 with Revolution Mannadium resulted in this version of Doom C with Revolution Synchron to make Power Tool, adding an old school equip spell, and Elemental Hero Prisma. Let's jump into it. Starting with the Doom C engine, I have the 2 copies of Medius. It's not really a card you want to draw. You can access this off of the aforementioned copy of Prisma, which is tutorable by Hero Lives. Prisma can reveal Archmage the Activist and then dump Medius from the deck to the grave. And then you can reborn him from the graveyard with his own effect. So preferably we don't actually draw Medius himself, because that's a normal summon which just conflicts with the Doom C. Instead we can start with a Hero Lives for example, and then that leads us into our plays. Should they hand trap us at any point, we can then proceed on with our Doom C engine and actually combo from there. So that's why I'm only playing 2 copies of Medius. Then I have 3 copies of Doom C Power Patron. Similar to my version of Archmage for Genesys Format, I also played 3 copies of the bird in that deck. I think you want 3 copies of the Power Patron that's attached to Medius, as long as they have a similar effect to these, where it's a good card to draw, in that it lets you play through hand traps. It's a card you're going to go through each and every copy of because it's a +1 when it goes to the grave. And it just creates more pairs in your deck. You want to draw multiple Doom C cards so you can effectively push for hand traps, or whichever board your opponent's able to present. Funnily enough, very similar to the Mannadium deck, which also was an amalgamation of different decks from the Visas lore. I mentioned in the intro that I was able to take inspiration from my old deck from Wise's Dortmund in 2023. With the Prema Revolution and the Prisma package. The Revolution can be synced away from your hand with a level 4 on the field into Power Tool Dragon to search for Premature Burial, which pretty much all the Doom Cs require, in that they need to be equipped with an equip spell to be able to function. If you Prema them back from the graveyard, you will be able to do so. Additionally, you can then summon this back like a Glow-Up Bulb and make a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Alternatively, if you go second with Revolution Synchron, you can just make Black Rose and nuke away the entire field. And the Prisma package is very akin to the Kashtira package that was played back in Mannadium, in that this gets you to your engine. We can start with the Hero Lives into Prisma, use Prisma to reveal the Activist and dump Medius to the grave. Then we can bring this back either by shuffling a monster from our hand or our field into the deck. And at that point, if they were to hand trap the Medius, you could just normal summon the Doom C Power Patron, or the other Doom Cs, and just play on from there. And that is exactly why having knowledge of Yu-Gi-Oh's history can help you deck build even in modern formats. There are plenty of examples throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history where champions have been created by just copying and re-implementing old ideas, or just looking at it from the historical perspective, if you're a fan of history that is. Moving on with the deck, I have 2 copies of Amalfi and 3 copies of Elara. I prefer getting access to Raiders, which is the continuous spell that searches a card, as opposed to a monster in my hand, so I think Elara is a better starter than Amalfi. Even though Ultras tend to be better than Supers, I actually think the Super is better in this case. Then I'm also maxing out on the last Doom C, which is Drastia. This is the main piece you're aiming to end on, as he lets you rank up into your boss monster. But that's it for the Doom C monsters. Then for the Doom C spells, I have 3 copies of Raiders. This is a very good searcher or summoner from the deck. And these neat bonus effects these cards have when they're destroyed to do something else. Which also goes for most of the Doom C monsters. It just helps a lot when you go second and try to push through a board. By getting multiple pops, you can eventually just pick apart their field. Similar to the Mermail deck I recently posted. Even though that's not really something that's particularly amazing in current TCG. Just popping 1 card doesn't really matter when Yummy prints infinite bodies. But in Genesis, I feel resources are much harder to come by, and they aren't free in the same way, like they are in Advanced TCG. So these small bonus effects are really good, and can definitely catch your opponent off guard, when you're playing a rogue deck like the Doom C. And then for the equips, I have 2 copies of Doom Dirge. Unfortunately, you need to play this to equip with Drastia from the deck. I wish there was more good equips you could play that weren't just a brick like Doom Dirge. I think if Doom C were to get an equip spell that could just be activated and equips to a monster in the deck, for example, kind of like Emergency Teleport, making it something that's not only good to draw in that it's a starter, but also would be equipable from the deck with the Drastia. Would definitely send this deck to maybe even a tier 1 status in advanced TCG. As we already know we're gonna get more support, that might just be the last missing piece. But since we don't have that, we need to play some supplementary engines, which we'll get to soon. Then I have one copy of Doomsea Destruction. This is the main selling point of Doomsea. When you go first and you search this card, you effectively end on a mistake, denying your opponent the opportunity to add cards from the deck to the hand. Generally your combo will end on a Doomsea Break the Actorus and a Drastia. The destruction needs to equip to an Exceed, so if you just have this, they would be able to get a search off before you use this effect to rank up. Because when you rank up this into Drastius, you get to suck up a monster on summon, so preferably you want to wait until they commit something to the field. But if you have the Raptorus in play, you can just use the Doomsday Destruction on this. If they start with a search card, you don't need to immediately rank up into this, just to be able to activate the mistake. But as long as your hand can go for that, which most can, you can get to your full combo. That's it for the Doomsea spells. Then for some other engines, I have 3 copies of Revolution Synchron, and 3 copies of Premature Burial. We already touched a bit on Revolution Synchron and what you can do with this card, but even just drawing Premature Burial on its own is just Monster Reborn. This card is banned in Yu-Gi-Oh TCG, and that's because you can loop it with some obscure combos. Is that ban warranted? Maybe not, but in Genesys it's only 7 points. And the fact that it's an equip matters oh so much for this deck. Power Tool can search it, and for turn 3, should you just prem back a Drastia, you can immediately use the rank up effect, which gives your deck a lot more plays when you go second, and even turn 3. But that's it for the Revolution engine. Then the Prisma engine, of 1 copy of Prisma, and 3 copies of A Hero Lives. Paying half your life for a Prisma is well worth it. By summoning the Prisma from the deck, we get an additional level 4 on the field, which can let us end on various rank 4s, which can be further disruptions when we go first. Opening Hero Lives and Revolution Synchron is an absolutely insane combo. You get to dump Medius from the graveyard, and you get to summon Power Tool, which gets you Premature Burial. Then you bring back the Revolution Synchron and you turn this into a Crystal Wing, giving you a negate before your opponent is able to use anything on the Medius, which obviously is a very good combo, and should lead you to win most games. That's it for the engine cards. Then for my non-engine, I have 2 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 copies of Ghostmourne and Moonlit Chill, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. I think hand traps are the way to go in this deck. A lot of the time you have a Medius in the graveyard, so if you have a dead hand trap in the hand, you can just put this back and then reborn the Medius and play on from there. Additionally, the Ash and Mourn are level 3 tuners, so you can use these to make your synchro plays. And with the Doomsday engine costing you 0 and just the premise are 7 each, you can fit all of these hand traps, rounding out the main deck to 100 points. Then for the extra deck, I have 2 copies of the Actorus, 1 Tornado Dragon, 1 Redoer, 2 copies of Drastrius, 1 Valon, 1 Aggregator, 1 Malong, 1 Power Tool, 1 Black Rose, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 Packbit, 1 Garura, and 1 Deactorus. That's it for the extra deck. It's a lot of Slayer targets and various utility Synchros and XYZs. Then for the side deck, I have 3 copies of Gamma Seal, the Kaiju, 3 copies of Vados, 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, 3 Ultimate Slayer, and 3 copies of Magic Deflector. I think these non-engine cover your bases quite well for the metagame that is currently in Genesys Format. But of course, you can change things up for your local metagame. But that's it for the deck profile. I really enjoy the Doomsea deck. Not only the artwork, but also the way the deck plays. It reminds me a lot of Unchained. And when I get the opportunity to play some of my favorite cards like Revolution Synchron, I just can't pass that up. I think this card is very underutilized in Genesys Format. Even in decks like Mannadium, which I definitely want to try out in Genesys Format. But what do you guys think about Doomsea and the various tech cards I chose to play? Let me know in the comments. But until we see each other again, thank you for watching and have a good rest of your day. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.